Radio Detox back again with a really cool guest, someone I got to hang out with. I'm so privileged, got to hang out with Dion Wilson of Bitcoin for the Arts when we were in Vegas a couple weeks ago. Welcome, Dion. I'm so excited to get to talk to you about this today.
Hello, Heather. Thank you for having me. Yes.
Yes, I am excited. One, I'm excited to have Bitcoin and the Bitcoin for the Arts in the space. And I've told you this. I told you this in Vegas and probably like fangirled out about the work that you're doing because like this is, to me, this is huge. It validates the space, but for those of us who've just been trying to do the music thing for the last couple of years in this space, like we needed more people. We needed more partners. We need more podcasters. We need more people who are into the arts. And you bring it all. And so I wanted to kind of start with, before we get into Bitcoin for the Arts, just take a step back and go, okay, what brought you to Bitcoin? What's your Bitcoin story? I'm representing with the shirt, so we're going to get there. But first, Dion, tell me how you came to Bitcoin.
Heather, thank you. Good question. So, honestly, I fell upon Bitcoin, I believe, by accident, but maybe not by accident.
Oh,
I was transitioning from being a dancer. This is the end of my dance career, and moving into being a personal trainer.
hmm.
So during this time, I am building a personal training business, and I'm trying to understand how to go from the nonprofit world of being a dancer into this
Mm,
traditional world of business work and this thing called business credit and how to build yourself in this traditional sense of this monetary system we're in. And, as I'm scrolling through YouTube, watching videos and things, this Bitcoin stuff keeps popping up on my feed. And
oh,
I'm
you got
like, okay,
targeted.
well, I got targeted, like, so I guess, somewhere's my algorithm must have thought I was a good candidate. And
Hmm.
lo and behold, that's the first thing they got right. So Bitcoin kept popping up on my feed. And finally decided, like, let me click on a video and see what this Bitcoin stuff is. And of course, most people didn't quite understand it at first. But, I'm a person that's always open minded, always, looking for the next best opportunity. And, I'm always ambitious and thinking that there's always something great that's going to come along. So it wasn't really a hard thing for me to try to take some time and understand what it was all about. And of course, I didn't quite understand it, even though started looking at, okay, well, what is Bitcoin? What is cryptocurrency? And I just kept going back and forth to it until, I started finding the right people in the industry to listen to.
That's the
That was
big part.
probably key. That was the big part. Because after I found those first initial Bitcoin videos, of course, I got dragged down the shitcoin rabbit hole.
I know it happens to
And
everybody.
so, lo and behold, I find myself dabbling into every currency that is possible because I think I can get rich off of something that's 0.0001 cents. And if I buy enough of them, then I'm set.
I'm gonna buy $10 of
And
that.
then,
There's my retirement fund,
yeah,
man. I'm so set, right?
there we go. And then I, learned the hard way, like a lot of people. And then, like you said, finding those right people, such as like Jeff Booth, was
Mm-hmm.
instrumental, reading the
He's the
Bitcoin
best.
Standard.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and this is how I said, "Oh, wait a minute, there's something different to this Bitcoin technology than everything else I'm hearing about in the space." And then I started to focus my energy on Bitcoin. And lo and behold, I found Club Orange at the time, the Orange Pill app. And that was very instrumental for me because I had only been watching YouTube videos and I never thought that there was actually somebody in my realm that actually was a real Bitcoiner. I thought this stuff was only existing online.
Mm-hmm.
And I found the Orange and that there were actually people within my community who had found Bitcoin. And that took me down the rabbit hole of now I'm meeting people. I'm
Yeah.
actually in the space, meeting people who are communicating, who are building things, who are networking in the space. And then I just said, well, I've got to figure out a way for me to be in Bitcoin full time. Like, like this is what I want to do. Like
Yeah, I'm
I
tired of the old world.
like it just all makes sense. I'm tired of the old world. I'm tired of being mistreated, being, coming from the arts industry was part of the reason why I'm transitioning out of the arts and into personal training is because I'm sort of fed up with how the politics work in the space and what it takes to consistently be in the space. So I was a little bit frustrated with the arts anyway. But Bitcoin gave me just a whole new insight on just how to think about life and what should we be valuing. It changed my entire value system. So once I started to understand Bitcoin, then I said, all right, how can I figure out a way to connect Bitcoin to still what I really love, which is the arts? And it just came to me one night in my sleep, Bitcoin for the arts just makes sense. I have been also watching my friends who are still involved in the arts talk about the struggles and dance companies going on strike and artists not doing well. And the month that I'm having my moment about forming Bitcoin for the arts, there's a story on the news about Broadway possibly going on strike. The actors literally came to an agreement the day of the strike potentially taking place. And I was like, whoa, it's happening. The fiat
Mhm.
system is collapsed
Yeah.
and the art
It's
space
screwing
is
everybody.
feeling it first. So I said, this is it. This has to be my connection between Bitcoin and the arts. It just makes sense that if the funding and the landscape is drying up for artists, artists have got to find their way into the Bitcoin space.
Mhm.
And this is how I am. This is where
Yeah.
that's my Bitcoin journey.
This is what we've been saying for a couple years about the music, about not just, and when I say the music, I mean the live music industry, but also the recorded music industry. And it's the fiat system's ruining everything, right? The incentives aren't aligned. The money is being debased. The currency is decreasing in value. And so there's this major problem that I think the misnomer is, or the assumption, whatever you want to call it, maybe it's a stigma, maybe it's propaganda, but there's this thing going around that like rich people bad, we should tax the rich and that'll fix this, and corporations bad and they need to pay more taxes and that'll fix this. And none of these people realize that they're really just playing into the Keynesian economics propaganda system. So like that's one piece of this, that people are working harder and harder to get less and they don't realize that. And every field is being affected by this. And you were right to attack the field of the arts. And I've been focusing for a couple of years specifically on music. And so if we all come together now, that's why I was so excited to meet you in Vegas. And Julie Costello told me, you have to find Dion. And I just automatically walked into you looking at the federal ending guitar that Jake Allen did art wise. And shout out to Jake because he was there when you and I first met with him. Like, right, like this moment just happened like at 9 a.m. on Pro Day at the Bitcoin conference where I was like, you're Dion. Julie said I had to meet you. I'm like, this is so exciting because we need more Dion in the space. We need somebody to come in here and because we've kind of separately had the arts, right? There have been like artists like Madex or Flo Montoya, and then there have been the music folks, right? You know, there's the visual art folks, but we haven't had dance and theater yet. We haven't had that portion of the arts. We have a sculpture. What is his name? Bitcoin Brecky, or you know who I'm talking about? The guy that made
Right.
like the big, yeah. I'm probably just saying his handle on Twitter or something instead of getting the name right, but or it's like Brecky
Yeah,
von Bitcoin or something. You know what I'm talking about. People watching this will know what I'm talking
something
about.
like that.
But
Yes, I've actually reached out to Brecky.
yeah, reached out to dude. This is such a perfect conversation because so you're gonna kind of, I guess, I don't, maybe I'm wrong, but let you answer this. Like maybe you're kind of finally tying it together and bringing the community together in such a way that us music dorks haven't been able to do yet. I'm not a musician. I come from radio. Like you come from the arts to fix this with Bitcoin. I come from radio, which is like the worst corporate trash of the last 30 years. Don't get me started. And so I can attack it from that angle, but I've like I told you privately, like I'm looking for peers. We need more people who you get it, you grasp it, you want to fix it, and you're ready to do it, and you have the expertise in all areas required. So like what is the goal of Bitcoin for the arts? This is your chance to just like explain how you're bringing it in.
Well, one of the first things you just said is trying to galvanize the artists and build a community of artists. Because one thing we have to do as artists, which we haven't been very good at in the fiat system, is we have to support each other. We have to build our community. We have to build our coalition because if we don't have a foundation of support amongst each other, it's very hard to get others to support what we're trying to
Yeah,
do.
who's going to
So
lobby for
first of
you?
all, we have to so Bitcoin is a tool that brings people together. I've experienced that just in my local Bitcoin meetups and community. So I'm like, well, why can't we use Bitcoin and art to bring people even closer together? Now we have a
Hmm.
double connection. We connect because of art, and we can connect because there is a sound system for us to be creators on. And if that is not enough to, bring us together, then I'm not sure what is, but I really believe it is. So our idea is to use artists, bring artists together who understand the principles of what Bitcoin allows, and then allow those artists to share their stories and cultivate, or as we say in the Bitcoin community, orange pill the rest of
Yes,
the world. Because I feel that, the tech, we need the tech. I love you guys. I love the developers. We don't have Bitcoin without you guys.
true.
But there is a big but. I don't think the dev community is what is going to take Bitcoin to mass adoption.
Yes. Thank
In
you.
order to
Thank
get to
you.
that level, I think we need the people. We
Yeah,
need the artists.
it's not a slight against the dev community, but I
Not as
think that
right.
we need them. They've done a
Everyone
lot so
has their
far.
position.
Yeah,
They
that's
have their position. They have
mhm.
marked their space in the Bitcoin realm. We know
Mhm.
exactly their purpose and what they're doing and how important it is what they're doing.
Mhm.
Now we just need them to understand there's another element that needs to come along with you
Yes.
all. And we need your support as well, devs. We need
Mhm.
your support. We need you all to understand that this is the next level of taking the Bitcoin adoption to the
Yes.
masses. We have the tools, we have the protocol. Now allow those artists to use those tools and use those protocols to orange pill the rest of the world. So
And
that's what
I'll go
Bitcoin for the
further.
arts wants to do.
Yeah, I will go further and say that we're now at a place where the devs at large, not going to name any names, we're just going to say the group of devs at large need to listen to the arts community or whatever community wants to come on and get into the rails
Yes,
that have already been built. You need to listen to Dion. You need to listen to the musicians. You need to listen to the dancers, like, because what they're going to request is vitally important to their career, reputation, earnings, etc. And so like some of that is going to have to do with IP, and the dev community loves the whole sovereign individual thing and loves to pirate, and I've taken a lot of flack for calling this out, and I'm going to continue on that path and die on that hill because IP is important. Publishing rights are important. Not having somebody use your name and likeness with AI without your permission, all of this stuff, these are now issues and they are important and they've got to be addressed, and the devs need to listen to the creatives who are coming to them with requests regarding these issues.
right. I mean, yeah, because ultimately, as a dev, you want to build the tools that the people need.
Hmm.
And there's probably no group that understands the needs more than the artists because we're the bottom feeders. We're feeding off of society. We're being
Mm,
inspired by society in order to bring you the visuals and the creativity that you all see. So
yeah.
it is one big circle. And we all have to really support each other in this circle. So thank you, devs, for your part. Now we need you all to help us to continue the journey, to
Yeah, help
take
us
it
along
to
because
that next level.
people want Bitcoin adopt. We all, those of us who understand Bitcoin, we want Bitcoin adoption. We want the Bitcoin standard. And then I've been in the Nostr space for the last 2 years as well. And we want Nostr adoption. We want a healthy Nostr community. We want people to use Nostr, in the way they're choosing. And so I think if people really care about Nostr adoption, it can't just be about the devs. It needs to be about the users. And I think that has been The thing that's kind of hurt Nostr throughout history is that it's devs building for other devs when we actually need to pivot and be building for end users. And I think the easiest way to onboard people to Nostr is to onboard the culture, the creatives, the people who are going to put art and music and all things beautiful on Nostr. That could
Mhm.
be poetry, that could be photography, that can be dance, that can be theater. If the value for value, if you want to call it that, idea works and it's helpful to musicians who are, I guess, more and more marginalized economically with each year. It's not paying increasingly more each year to play in the local clubs and bars, for example, and that industry is struggling. And it's not becoming, you're not going to earn more money for being on Spotify as an independent artist. It behooves you to use this system to your advantage, and this way of monetization that we have with the Bitcoin and Lightning Network, or I mean the Bitcoin Lightning Network, and that harnesses two different technologies, RSS and or Nostr, in the apps that people have been building for the last few years. And that gives artists, for us anyway, that have been doing the music for the last couple of years, that gives musicians a way to earn a little bit more money on the side rather than just depend on, like, I talked to one musician, Marshall Benson, who I met at a show in Austin, and he was in the band FM Rodeo at the time. I don't know if he's still in FM Rodeo because I haven't talked to him recently, because he's changed bands, right, over the years since I don't know, year and a half since I've met him at the end of 2024. But he told me at the time, he and a band that he was in here, they were using broken cymbals as a way to make money. Like, they would sell broken cymbals after a show to their fans, like $100 a pop, and the fans would buy them. Like, they'd autograph them and everything. It's a really popular local band here called King Cherry, and that was an avenue for them to earn some money, just like having a merch table, just like, maybe getting a little take from the door if you get anything from playing at a local club, and small clubs that they were playing. I forget the name of the club that we met at, but it was in Old Town Scottsdale. So, you're not getting much from a $10 door charge, right? You got to be a really popular band. And fortunately, around here, King Cherry is a popular band. And so he was also earning a little bit of money at the time to go on a 15-city tour for another independent band. But he also still had, and this is everyone in the space, very few people that I've met don't have a day job and can make a living doing this, or have a way that they're supported, so that this idea is not yet a full-time job for most people. Most artists they work a job, they have a 9 to 5, or they have a fiat job or something that allows them to be on tour. And then they're still like, okay, but we got to pay for gas for the tour, or we got to pay for the vehicle, or we got to pay for the flight. And then we got to pay for the, whatever it takes to get drums across the country, my drum set or my guitar, or whatever. And so there's always going to be expense, right? And I'm not even talking yet about like the cost to rent a recording studio, recording times, just TLDR, there's a lot of cost here. And maybe you probably have a different take on like just what Bitcoin for the Arts like needs to fundraise, I guess, in order to operate and in order to provide what you want. Cause you are a 501c3. And if you want to talk
Yes,
about
we
kind
are.
of that end of it, go for it.
Yeah, so basically, we are C3, and our funding model is 55% towards the grants directly to artists payable through their Bitcoin wallets,
Mm-hmm.
30% towards the programs, 10% towards our operating budget, and a 5% long-term HODL wallet, so that
Mm-hmm.
eventually we don't have to seek funding at a strategic, massive level. We will be able to fund ourselves. And that is the model that we want to present to other arts institutions and organizations, is allow them to understand that with Bitcoin, you can build a long-term reserve because the funding will dry up. We have to create another way for artists to fund art. And Bitcoin allows us to do that. So, right now, as Bitcoin for the Arts, we're seeking partners, we're seeking sponsors to help us push these programs, to help us reach artists, because we want to fund artists. Like you just said, all of those little things, you need studio time, you have to pay for equipment, you have to pay for, assistance. And it's so many different things that artists could use help for besides just that time that they're actually taking to create. Because you have to have all of the things in order to get to that moment where you can actually have the time and the space
Yes.
to create. So
Mhm.
we need resources for artists to get to those moments. And then we want to build it on Bitcoin because Bitcoin is going to allow us to create the next renaissance because we want quality work. We want good work. We
Mhm.
want artists to have time on their side where they can actually indulge into their creativity to
Yeah.
create the best work that they can possibly do. And Bitcoin allows that because right now in the fiat system, even though artists are creating, I hear it all the time. Well, yeah, I did that project and I did it for the money. Or I did it because, I had to pay the rent, but it really wasn't what I wanted to do. I just kind of had to
Mhm.
put something together so I could make
Yeah.
ends meet. Well, that's what happens in a broken system where the money isn't real, the work isn't real.
Right.
Bitcoin changes all of that. So we want to build enough so that we can reach those massive legacy institutions because we understand that that's still where most people are drawn to. So we're not going to say that we're just going to cut them out and focus directly on Bitcoin. We want to use Bitcoin as a way to reach the masses. We want to bring the normal arts world, the traditional arts world, into the Bitcoin space. So we need funding in order to do that, just to be in front of their spaces. I want to be able to go to the galas at the Met, at the Whitney, at the Guggenheim, and introduce Bitcoin for the arts and allow them to say, hey, guys, we have a system over here that we are allowing artists to build value for value. And these artists, they need funding, but they don't need as much funding. And their funding
Mhm.
is not being, evaporated as fast. They can actually use this funding and sustaining them a little bit longer. And this is what we have to teach. So we need the artists who've already found Bitcoin to come along. We have a podcast series where we're sharing Bitcoin journeys. We're sharing artists' articles and stories on our website. I mean, right
Mhm.
now we just want to put artists on the front page in every way possible, create as much visibility as we can. We want to partner with the Bitcoin companies that are already out here and understand
Mhm.
Bitcoin. We do need that financial system of
Yeah.
sound money, not necessarily the traditional money, but we still need the Medicis of the Bitcoin era to come into the
Yeah.
space, right? So we
I'm calling out Michael Saylor right now. Write the check, Michael. Write the check.
Michael, if you want to write the check, we would much appreciate it. But we want that check to
Pen right
come
here.
and on a sound money ecosystem. We want him to come with it in a principle where he understands the true value of Bitcoin. We don't
Mhm.
necessarily want him to sell us a MicroStrategy product. We
Right?
understand that that is his way of reaching the traditional system. So,
Mhm.
we are
That's smart.
taking a page of a sailor's playbook. He's found a way to use his company to reach the traditional system. And now we want to use Bitcoin for the arts to reach the traditional system, but we want to do it in a way where we bring the traditional system into us. We don't
Mhm.
necessarily want to offer them something that is not really Bitcoin. So that would be the
Right.
one difference. Yes, we definitely need those people. If you are anybody who can understand the vision that Bitcoin can create, the sound money system, the long term renaissance, the everlasting work. I mean, we still have work from the previous renaissance, right? We're still talking about the Michelangelos and the Da Vinci's. So
Mhm.
imagine what we could create with sound money.
And
We
these
did that.
artists they're so good. And it's like you made me think of my artist friend Sangeeta Kausik, and she runs something called Isan Ishan, where she don't ask me to spell that. Um she is a South Asian, but she is just in love with Arabic script and making art and bridging cultures. And she worked for the Met for a while, and what her work is extraordinary. And I have never seen somebody work so hard to make ends meet over a long period of time. It shouldn't be that way for somebody who's a brilliant and talented artist, and she has been since we're in high school. Oh my God. Like, she's truly gifted, and that work should be funded. And I've tried to onboard her to Bitcoin, right? So I did a podcast with her, and it's just so hard to train people to get into this value for value economic system, but we can't give up. We got to keep trying. And so I keep finding myself going out to like non-Bitcoin places, whether it's social media or a normie event or whatever, and being like, or going to my normie friends and being like, hey, give this a shot. And, the value for value model hasn't quite delivered yet. I'm not going to sell people on something that hasn't worked yet. But ultimately, when this thing could work in the future, like, this essentially would get the 1,000 true fans model working, right? Where you have 1,000 true fans who pay you $100 each a year, and then you're making 100 grand a year. So you crack 6 figures, and you're able to live in some of these places like New York, where I would wager to say, like New York or LA, you need to make more than $100,000 a year to have a good lifestyle, depending on your personal situation, living situation, roommates, spouse, etc. And it's so much work. So, like, let's bridge the gap now and get money into Bitcoin for the arts. Correct me if I'm mistaken, but you were the first person to come along and see this and start a Bitcoin for the arts and start a nonprofit to fund artists and their work in general. I think you're the first one.
I believe so. Yeah.
You're
I
like
mean, I'm
paving the
just
way.
basically, it was the, traditional model that I said, well, we just got to do the same thing on Bitcoin. I mean, it just makes sense. I mean, like I just maybe, and it's, no one thought about it yet because they are still just trying to understand the Bitcoin landscape. And that's understandable, so, and like I was just talking to Arnick Malcolm earlier, who's a great artist in the Bitcoin space. And he said, yeah, there's probably going to be others who will eventually think of this idea as well. So
Hmm.
it's just a matter of time before we grow. And you just made me think about something else. I remember when, YouTube had just really first came about, and there were tons of like videos on YouTube, but that value system still wasn't quite built yet. People didn't quite understand, the value within the YouTube space, that they could actually make content and create value for
Because it was
themselves.
so new.
And you know
Yeah.
who was one of the first people to do that? One of the first people to understand
Gosh,
the
I don't remember.
YouTube ecosystem and build it? It was an artist by I forget the young man's name, but he actually had a song that went viral. Can
Hmm.
what is his name? It's right on the tip of my tongue. Lo and behold, it was an artist who cultivated YouTube and allowed other people to understand the value on YouTube. And today we
Hmm.
have millions of podcasters, broadcasters, all kinds of things on YouTube.
Streamers.
But it was an artist that helped YouTube platform grow to the potential that it has become now. So
Yeah, it
what
was
I'm
it was.
saying is it is going to be an artist, a cultivator, to
Mm-hmm.
understand how to bring Bitcoin to the masses. So it's
Yeah.
just a matter of time.
What is
This
the
is what
saying
we're here
that
to do.
I think Avi says this sometimes too, is a culture is upstream of adoption. Maybe it's QW that says that. Somebody who makes club chain radio says that a lot. And it's true because it gives you context, and it's hard to beat arts. It's hard to beat music and art and things that people love. People love these slices of life, whether it's photography or a song or a painting or a sculpture or seeing Dion dance at the theater. It's these are the good parts of life. Like, we work a job. Some of us, work a job you hate all week in an office, and then God, you're just waiting to go out Friday, Saturday night, you go to the show, or you go to the theater, or you go to a concert. You just can't wait to get off work to read that book. It's just, this is the good part of life. And yeah, I know there's not an economic model that the book author or the musician to do that full time, right? That's why when you go to your parents as a kid, you're like, Mom, Dad, I want to dance. I want to do radio. They're like, you better go get a degree in something else. You can keep a roof over your head. I think everyone who's creative got that from their parents. Like, that's nice, dear, but go learn a profession, and then it's like, okay, but as you said earlier, Bitcoin fixes this. you know.
And that's what we wanna teach artists, it's another thing we
Mhm.
wanna do. We don't just want to build a community of artists, and then we want to be there to offer you the resources and be able to educate you on these tools that you're speaking of, these value for value system.
Yeah.
This is why it's very important to have people like you in the space who can connect with artists because they
Mhm.
need to understand how these tools work and really see firsthand what it can do. And I think that's
Mhm.
another thing, artists need that visual, they hear about it a lot, but this is why they're creators. They needed the Bitcoin for the arts to bring it to their face so that they can
Yeah.
actually see how this world works and not just hear about it.
I think that's the hardest part about this whole space. There's such a learning curve, and then it comes down to how do you show it? How do people experience it? And like you and I were hanging out in Vegas at the Las Vegas show. For the first time, I felt like the screen for the zaps that showed the Bitcoin coming into the artist, it was a really big screen, and like half the screen was a QR code and like a piece of content that you could zap. And then the other half was like watching the zaps come in and the people fighting each other to have the top zap, and it got competitive and it got gamified, which was super fun. And every time somebody zapped the performer on stage, it would show up on the screen and everybody would be like, yeah! And it was super fun. And I feel like that has been something that we haven't done a good job illustrating over the years. And maybe we didn't have the right tech. And maybe, we've been showing like the screen with like for years, in any iteration, it's been the screen where you see the performance and then there's a chat next to it. And then maybe at the top real small, you would see the zaps and maybe you would see people talk in the chat. But this particular setup from PubPay really drove home what it looks like and what it feels like to be in an audience at a place, at a venue, and watching the Bitcoin come into the artist. And so that made it more visual than I think it's been in the past, where I think it was more, if you were watching from home on like Toonster.io or Zapstream or Primal, like if you were watching
Yeah.
from home,
Mhm.
it was very easy to see, where I think in the venue, it wasn't as easy to see before. And so that visual component is important. And also the understanding and kind of walking people through, okay, first this is where we've gotten hung up over the years, right? Because Bitcoin's a lot to learn. So if you want to do this Bitcoin for the arts model or this value for value model, you got to understand Bitcoin, and people come with certain stigmas and assumptions about that. You got to break through that, right? And then you've got to come in and you got to understand the Lightning Network and the Zaps and Nostr and or RSS, which is an old technology, and Nostr, the newer technology that's still being built. And what essentially people don't understand is that we've been using the word Nostr too much, and what we've essentially built is the Rails, like the wrapper on top of Nostr, so that people can come in and just use it. And I think there's less of a learning curve as more people come into Bitcoin. I think years ago when I got into Bitcoin, it was like, okay, the first thing you got to do is you got to listen to Andreas Antonopoulos, and then you get into, the
Right.
Bitcoin Standard came along, and then everybody's reading the Bitcoin Standard, and like I really got serious about Bitcoin in like late 2019, or sometime in 2018 is when I got involved and went, okay, I don't get it. And I didn't get it and I didn't grasp it. And I was just like, whatever. And then I got a little more into it in 2019. And then I was working in TV journalism in 2020. And that's where it opened up. And I was like, okay, what's the escape hatch to this? All of the system. I don't want to do this anymore. This is done. I know this is wrong. This feels wrong. The pandemic feels wrong. The election feels wrong. I've covered elections, but for decades, and it's just, the whole thing feels wrong. How do we get out? And that's where I started to really grasp Bitcoin. And I would get up in the morning, and my pandemic year, right? I'd get up and I'd watch Max and Stacy on RT on YouTube. I would watch Simply Bitcoin. I got quickly through the shitcoin podcasters and got straight to like Simply Bitcoin and Max and Stacy, and that's where my education began. And then there's no RT in America anymore. Things have really changed very quickly over the years too. And so I think getting into Bitcoin and being orange pilled, the act itself has changed. And I think we've hit an era where people may not read the Bitcoin Standard. Most people are. I love that book, and I still keep rereading it, but I think it can be really dry if it's coming to him. Like, I'm not going to get my niece and nephew to read the Bitcoin Standard. I don't know if I can get my nephew's not a reader to begin with, but I did get Bitcoin is for Everyone when I was in Vegas, and I got a couple copies, one for me, one for her, or for my niece. I mean, and so I can try to get my niece, who is a big reader, but she doesn't read nonfiction books, but I can try with Natalie Brunell's book to maybe like with Bitcoin is for Everyone, because another stigma that we have in the arts is everyone is very liberal and very left leaning, and Bitcoin is interpreted incorrectly, might I add, to be this crazy right wing thing. And it doesn't help that we have a president who's like crypto, and
Right.
whatever. And people are so into identity politics. I think it's another Achilles heel in this space, is that people try to define Bitcoin and Nostr and go, well, where does it fit into my identity politics? These people, all they talk about is Bitcoin and number go up and eating meat, and I don't identify with that as my. So I
Well,
got, do you get any of that? Because I know we do get this in the music space, but are you getting that in the art space too, or are you just primarily starting with Bitcoiners they're already Bitcoiners and they're artists?
well, yeah, in the non-Bitcoin space, yeah, Bitcoin is a total right-wing thing. They cannot separate it from
Yeah.
politics. I try so hard to eliminate the political portion of the conversation. I say, let's just talk about the monetary portion. We don't have to talk about the politics. Let's just talk about the monetary system that we are all required to participate in. Let's just talk about
Mm-hmm.
that. We don't even have to talk about Bitcoin. Let's just talk
Right.
about that. So that is the conversation that I really try to hinge on with the non-Bitcoin space. And in the
Mm-hmm.
Bitcoin space, the artists get it. They're just focused on, all right, what can I actually create? How much, funding do I have? How can I sustain myself? What's the best way
Mm-hmm.
forward? What tools are being, used and updated that I don't know about that can really help me create value for value? So that's where we want to find and help those artists understand. And then the artists who just don't, have that sound money principle, the goal is to just teach them about the system they're in and
Mm-hmm.
just meet them wherever they are. And then eventually they'll start asking the questions about, well, why Bitcoin and what is Bitcoin?
Which are
Because if
great
you don't
questions.
understand, right, but you have to understand or at least come to terms with the fact that the current system is not working. So
Right.
that's the hard.
And then having the correct information about what's not working, and not blaming the rich people and not blaming the corporations,
Right,
and I'll be
right.
the first to say, look, I was a part of corporate radio. I get it. And it was politics that led to that. It was President Clinton, saying, hey, let's deregulate this industry. Let's let all these radio stations just buy up as many, let's let the companies buy up as many radio stations as they want. And like the market limit became 8. And so like you could be a big company and buy up 8 radio stations per market. And so that consolidation is what made a huge dent in the death of your local radio station, independent music being on the
Yeah.
radio, and etc. So this is my mea culpa for being a part of that since the late 90s, and saying, hey, I knew at the time that it was bullshit and I didn't want to be a part of it then, and I knew I wasn't going to have a long-term career in radio when I got into it, because I knew this was happening. They told us from the get-go, Clinton just did this thing in 1996, you're already fucked. Just buy a station wagon so you can chase jobs around the country. That's what your life is going to be. And I was like, okay, because that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to be a creative person. And, over the years, I found ways to survive, but I don't do radio anymore. And most people I worked with in radio don't do radio anymore. And some have been forcibly retired, and some are doing the station wagon, follow the jobs around the country thing. And so I'm sure, being an artist I see people in bands doing the same thing where, you jump from band to band, or you've got a fiat job, you've got a 9 to 5 job, or you got 2 or 3 9 to 5 jobs, whatever, you know what I mean? You're doing what you got to do to make it. So my next question is, who's involved, which artists or which creatives are involved already in Bitcoin for the arts, if anybody, or just kind of where you're at onboarding artists, I guess, is maybe the best question.
Well, we've met quite a few artists in the Bitcoin space, from some visual artists. One of our founding board members who really helped me get this thing going, Avi Brewer, who is a storyteller, and he's just a connoisseur of all arts, as I just call
He's an
Javi.
artist, yes.
He is, he is doing everything and then some in the Bitcoin space and the artist
Mhm,
space. And he's doing a great job of connecting and meeting artists around the world. And
mhm.
he's tying food into the arts landscape of Bitcoin as well, which is something that we need because that's another thing that really cultivates society, right? So we can't leave that element out. We have Ahmed Clean, who is another one of our board members who is a photographer and
Mm,
he's working in the branding space. And he's really done a great job with creating our logo and a lot of the merch that we're gonna be coming up with. So, we got some really good artists working with us.
heavyweights.
And of course we have Ainsley Costello's mom working with us, and she's been
Yes,
very insightful
she's
in
the
pointing
best.
us in the right direction and
She's a
making sure that
powerhouse.
we're
I
on
don't think
mission.
people realize what a powerhouse Julie Costello is, because not only is she
Yeah,
Ainsley's mom, Ainsley's
yeah,
momager, right? Never
that's
fuck
it.
with a music momager, okay? They
That's it, yeah. Right.
Nobody works harder, nobody knows more. But Julie does not like to be visible, and Julie's kind of a quiet power. Like, she can get things done, but she will defend the artists and what the artists need until the cows come home, because she is very protective of not only her daughter's career, but she's every musician's mama. She's momager. She can't manage anybody more than Ainsley. Okay, we've had this talk, like bandwidth, right? Ainsley's momager, and that's it. She can't run around managing artists, but she will do the right thing as far as protecting artists like Ainsley, who want to be professionals, who want to have a career, who maybe they want to work with a record label or a PRO someday. And maybe they wouldn't say no to that, but there would be a stipulation of like, hey, I might get on your label or I might join your PRO. I might do those things, but the Bitcoin aspect is non-negotiable. And so, like, I don't know, the brain trust that Julie brings to the space is very, it may not be visible, but oh boy, it's a vital part of what we're all doing.
It's gonna be visible with our organization. I can tell you that very much. She's been very hands-on in making sure that we're, going in the right direction. So I'm really excited about what we're doing. And yeah, we've got some great people working with us. And we have a Bitcoin art connoisseur, Kyle Knight, who has just been, one of the biggest artist supporters in the space. And he's an early Bitcoiner, and he's been great at really connecting us with a lot of artists in the space. So we have some really good people and a diverse group of artists, which is what we want because we want to focus on all disciplines. We don't want to leave anybody out. Goal is to knock down the walls and make sure there are no gatekeepers locking anybody out. That is definitely one of our main focuses.
That's
Is we
awesome.
want every artist to feel welcome and involved.
Mm-hmm. So the next time I go out to dinner with my local Bitcoin friends, and I say, "Hey, I've been talking with Dion for a while now with Bitcoin for the Arts, and I'm gonna put all the Bitcoiners on notice that I want people to donate to Bitcoin for the Arts or get involved." I guess what are the routes to do that? Like, how do we donate? How do we get involved? How do we tell artists to get involved? Like, because we all know somebody who's an artist that needs to get involved. I'm like, what are sort of like the next steps as you get interested in Bitcoin for the Arts?
Well, first of all, you can go to our website, bitcoinforthearts.org. We try to put as much information on there as possible about everything that we're doing. So you can sign up for the newsletter, you can sign up to volunteer, you can sign up to offer any type of projects or ideas or collaborations that you may have
Mm-hmm.
because we're open. We decentralized. The goal is not only are we building for the community, but we're building with the community. So if you have any ideas, if any leads, we're also looking for more board trustees because
Mm-hmm.
we're very early on, and we are going to be a global organization. Right now, we are starting
Good.
locally. We're based out of New York City, but because of the principles and ethos of Bitcoin, which is a borderless currency, it allows us to be a borderless organization. And we
Love it.
already have board members in other countries, such as Buttercup Roberts, who has been very helpful for us.
Love
and she's
her.
not even here in America. So, we have other people in other countries who are very inspired about what we're doing. I've been able to connect with artists in other countries. So, we want to build
Cool.
Bitcoin for the art branches and nodes in the UK, in Europe, in Australia, in
Mhm.
Asia. So, we want to build a real artist resource platform for artists around the globe. So there are tons of ways you can get involved. You can just reach out to me directly. You can find us on Nostra. We're on all the major social media platforms. You can reach out to our board members. They're also on the social media platforms. So we've tried to be as open as possible. We also have a GitHub. So we're looking for devs to also contribute to our back
Yeah.
end setup and help us build this thing out. So, any way possible, we've tried to make sure that we are open and decentralized for hands on communication. For anybody that wants to build a relationship with us, if you have an arts organization, if you're a Bitcoin educator, we're open. We're here.
Let's get this thing done. Let's get
Let's
this
get
thing
this thing
going.
going.
We wanna get artists doing this
We want
because
to get
everybody
artists
benefits.
involved. We want to help artists. Everyone benefits. We just want to build this thing out in so many different ways. Ultimately, we would love to have a Bitcoin for the Arts festival,
Mhm.
where we're just imagine a Bitcoin conference that's just focused on art,
Yeah,
a global
it's
Bitcoin
about
for the
time.
Arts festival. That's where we want to be.
It
That's what
needs to
that's
be
one thing we want to do.
it needs to show up greater. I would say, like, we've artists have been invited. Like, obviously, you and I were just in Vegas at the conference, and Jake Allen was there with the guitars. There was another artist who was doing a live painting. There was there's a gallery. There was a gallery last year too. I've only gone the last 2 years, so I don't know. But like, the gallery was great last year. The gallery was good this year. I think we can do better. Like, I think we need more than just an annual gallery. I think we need to have like you're saying, a thriving community, and we need to have more of a presence at more of these events. And I know you've got an event coming up, Pub Key, if you want to talk about that, so we
Yes,
can
we're
get
very,
people
very, very
together.
excited about this. We are doing our initial arts benefit night, and that's going to be at Pub Key in DC, their new location. And it's going to be hopefully on September the 21st, which
Hmm.
is the day for the Bitcoin Policy Institute Summit, which is happening on the 22nd and the 3rd. And they will also be using that Pub Key location as well. So we're inviting people to come out for the summit, to come out for Bitcoin for the Arts night. And we are inviting artists to come out. We want to have a online Zapathon either that Sunday or Saturday before, in which we're going to showcase artists, maybe have a few artists perform, and we want
Hmm.
the audience to be able to zap these artists, to
Yes.
donate to Bitcoin for the Arts so that we can actually fund our arts night. We want to have a silent auction. A few artists have already volunteered to donate a few of their works for our silent auction.
Cool.
We want to have a few artists perform, and we just want to create visibility and raise awareness. And hopefully, this will be an annual event for us to raise funds because we are starting our granting third quarter of this year. And our goal that we would really like to reach is to be able to fund 50 artists by the end of 2026. But we
That's
certainly cannot
amazing.
do that if we don't have the support of the community. But that is ultimately one of our goals for this year. And each year we want to increase that number. We want
Hmm.
to eventually, have enough funding that we can also support other arts institutions who haven't found Bitcoin. Because, like I said, it's very important for us to be able to connect with the world outside of Bitcoin and help
Yes.
them understand what Bitcoin is.
Yeah. Like,
So we
it
have quite a
cannot
few
be.
things. No, I was just saying we have quite a few things going on leading up into that event. Julie Costello and Ainsley will be at Camp Nakamoto in June. They're going to also be raising awareness for us there and promoting us there. We are also going to be set up at the Bitcoin is for Everyone in Portland this coming weekend on the 22nd.
Awesome.
Visual artist Beth Fletcher will be representing us there. Beth has some amazing work. You can also see we have done a story with her on our website and featured some of her work. So we are already building relationship with artists who are going to represent Bitcoin for the arts and help us grow. And this is exactly what we want to do.
It's beautiful. I love that. That like we want to support 50 artists by the end of this year. Okay, we're halfway through the year, so let's pedal to the metal. These deep pocket Bitcoiners or deep wallet, so to speak. Like let's get people knowing that they can give back through the arts, so through a nonprofit that's using Bitcoin to support the arts and build community. And it's international. And Dion, you're doing great work. There's probably nobody better given that your experience, like you said, you were a professional dancer, but you came from Broadway, correct? Like let's just put it out there. Like your background is pretty stellar.
Yes, yeah. I spent a few years on the professional stage.
Just a
Yeah,
few.
so going back, I'm originally from Baltimore. I went to the Baltimore School for the Arts. That's where I got my formal training. I did a BFA at State University of New York, full dance program, and I branched out, danced with a few dance companies, and I made my way to find myself into Disney's The Lion King, the national tour, which was absolutely remarkable. It was a great show. I mean, a lot of moving pieces. So I will say that I have had a really good career as an artist, knock on wood. I've experienced from the low end to the high end of what it feels like to struggle as an artist and actually be able to live as an artist. And so this is why I feel like I'm kind of was in a great position to form something like Bitcoin for the arts. And I've had the opportunity to work with all artists, not just dancers, but actors, musicians, and set designers, directors, producers, choreographers. So I've had a full spectrum of the world of the arts, and I love it because, like I said, ever since I found Bitcoin, that's all I've been trying to do is how do I connect Bitcoin for the art with
Yeah, how do
art?
I make
Like
these?
it just makes sense. I just
Here's
gotta
what I
find
know.
Bitcoin.
Professional dancers make like the best
Yeah,
business people. Like I know that sounds hyperbolic in a way, but like no, it's seriously like every
right.
professional dancer I've ever known was like the most fierce business person.
Yeah,
Like after a dance career, before, during maybe, but definitely like after you stop dancing professionally and you got to move on, right? Because it takes a toll on the body. You get older and goals
right.
change and you're like, you get it. But everyone I've known that was a professional dancer moves on to become like the most successful business person ever. I don't know what it is about y'all, but I have noticed this is very consistent that like y'all are just like you get shit done,
It's that.
you make money, you provide value to the world. I freaking love it. Like you're unstoppable. And there's something about it. Like I can't even put my finger on it or find the words to explain, but this is every single professional dancer I've ever known. And I'm talking about, I can think of at least 3 people in my brain right now that I can say, that's amazing. That there's a
Yeah.
thing. There's something special. Maybe it's something they teach you in dance school. Maybe it's because every dance
I
teacher
was
like fiercely yells at you and like practically beats you to get you to learn something. You know what I'm saying? There's just something. There's a work ethic
I
or
was just
something.
going to say, if the discipline in the
Yeah.
dance industry, I would say is probably a little bit different than all the other forms of art.
Mm-hmm.
Dancers are, we're slightly coached and slightly torched,
Yeah.
so, it's kind of like,
Yeah.
so yeah,
If you've ever been a
very
dancer,
disciplined.
like, yeah, if you've ever had a dance teacher scream at you from across the room, it's all but physical violence in a dance class, okay? And I've never been a professional. I've taken dance classes throughout my life. And so it's like they will all
Right.
but physically beat you with a stick. I'm telling you, like,
Yes.
if you're
Yes.
there's something about
Yes.
dance that like I had a dance teacher once would scream at me for across. Take that on! It was like,
Right.
like I
Right.
think I still have nightmares, and so, but it's like it's the discipline, and that's a discipline that needs to be brought to this space because I think, and I without naming names, I think over the years I have seen a thing emerge where there's a little bit of a cliquishness, there's a little bit of a club, there's a little bit of elitistness. to Bitcoin and Nostr, and we gotta get rid of that. And it's really gotta be about the people. It's gotta be about the movement. It's gotta be about the people who need this the most. And as time goes on, and fiat dies, and the resulting tragedy of that affects every human being on this planet as the dollar and the other fiat crap dies, it's going to hold even more true that we cannot let this happen to Bitcoin where it becomes elitist in any way and it becomes about a club in any way. It's always got to be what Satoshi intended it to be from the start. And if we're not good stewards of that, or if you don't want to be a good steward of that, you got to get the fuck out. And that's my opinion. I'll call it
Right.
out. Maybe not so much
No,
on the
you're right.
podcast, but behind the scenes, I might have no problem calling out certain behaviors, or if maybe someday I stop being involved with something, you can put two and two together. But that's something that I think it's hard to understand sometimes
Well,
as
that's
Americans. Like
yeah.
there's.
Well, that's another reason why I kind of thought this was really important because,
Mm-hmm,
now that I've been in the Bitcoin space for a few years, I can also see the message changing and different narratives
mm-hmm.
being pushed. And one thing I definitely remember very distinctly Jeff Booth saying is the closer that we get, the louder the noise becomes. So
Sailor.
I'm looking at it as an opportunity to wean out the noise
Yes.
and, really try and stick to the principal message because as more people grow in the space, they become more influenced and then their messages become diluted. And part of it is the growth. And
Mm-hmm.
with growth, sometimes it's hard to stay focused and on track. But this is what we are going to do at the Bitcoin for the Arts. Hopefully, this is where my dance discipline will come into play most, is allowing us to stay focused and on track and make sure that we continue to push the right narrative of what Bitcoin should be: a peer to peer cash system that is decentralized, that allows for us to live on a sound money standard. And artists
Mm-hmm.
can use this to push themselves forward to create better work on a low time preference. That is the message that we want to send and allow artists to understand. Despite all the other messages that are being put out in the Bitcoin space, we're going to stick to the principles.
Amen. That's it. That's the end right there. We're gonna let Dion have the last word. We just have to be the proper stewards of this and not dilute what Satoshi originally intended.
Yes, precisely.
Dion, every time I get to talk to you is a joy and a privilege, and I love what you're doing, and please don't go anywhere. We need you. I feel like I finally got a friend in the space. Like I feel like I finally got like more peers in the space. I got to meet you and your beautiful wife, and I was like, oh, yes, more people like me. Thank you. That's the best feeling in the world, just to feel like you're finding more kindred spirits. So like, if nothing else happens and the world ends tomorrow, like, we got that, man. I found a kindred spirit. I want to watch you
I,
soar, man. This is great.
I appreciate it, Heather. I feel the exact same way. I told my wife the same thing when I first met you. I said, oh my gosh, I actually met not just someone who's a Bitcoiner, but they understand it and they want the same things that I want to happen in the Bitcoin space. I was like, this is amazing.
We're gonna do it, and we're gonna bring that dance discipline, like the dance teachers in the corner yelling at me to straighten my arm. I mean, we're going. Dion, you have an excellent rest of your day. I appreciate your time and your passion so much.
Thank you, Heather. Appreciate you having me on.